Welcome back, everybody. For your do now, you should have responded into your notes. Do you think the U.S. should be more isolated? Meaning, should the U.S. really just worry about itself and stop worrying about other countries and trying to solve the world's problems and getting involved with all the drama around the world? Should the U.S. just focus on itself and leave everything alone? And hopefully, you had reasons for why you think what you think. There's no right answer to this question. People have different opinions, both Democrats and Republicans across the board, um, what they think America should be doing. I bring up this question because the time frame we're going to learn about, this history is going to be the first time America really steps out and says, no, we're going to try and solve the world's problems. We're going to try and fix things for the rest of the world. Where before this, America really was isolated. They didn't get involved in other countries' problems, they kind of stuck to themselves. So we're going to learn about how America started stepping out and becoming this global power. And look at a lot of different issues that come with it. So the time frame we're looking at is the years 1945 to 1991. World War II is going to end in 1945, so we're not going to learn about World War II, but we are going to talk about the ending of the war to understand what changes. This time period is called the Cold War era. This is a time period where the U.S. was locked in this Cold War, this potential World War III with another country called the Soviet Union. Um, and while this is happening, America's going to go through a lot of changes, not just with how they deal with other countries, but how we deal with issues at home. So as we go through these decades, we're going to learn about the Cold War, America's involvement in different countries and what they were trying to do around the world during this time. We're also going to learn a lot about civil rights. So some of the um, issues when it comes to racism and discrimination and sexism that happen in this country, and a lot of the protests and push to change that. We'll talk about economics, right, how the country's doing financially and money wise and wealth wise. We'll talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about culture. So we're going to look at like art and music and television shows and movies and cars and fashion, how those different things changed in the United States from the 40s to the 90s. So, some of our big ideas, the big questions we're asking ourselves as we go through this: how should America deal with a threatening country? Right? If a country doesn't like us and threatens us, how are we supposed to react to that? If they're threatening to attack, what should we do? Also, when should we be going to war? At what point have we crossed a line and said America now needs to go to war? Where is that, in your opinion? We'll also talk about how individuals can create change in a system that is unfair, in a lot of ways broken. How can we create that change? And how does culture influence society? All right, so a lot of what we're going to talk about is the U.S., us and our bald eagle, versus the Soviet Union. There's their flag, their symbols, the bear. We're going to talk about a lot of the differences and different things like that. But we're definitely going to be talking about America's potential war with the Soviet Union that lasted for like 50 years. And we're going to talk about some of the conflicts that did happen, like Korea and Vietnam. We're going to talk about some of the issues around civil rights. We have Martin Luther King. We're going to talk economics, so people being able to buy houses and cars and things like that. We're also going to talk culture and music. So here we got Elvis Presley, one of the most famous musicians from the 1950s. Today our goal is to just go over vocab words. We got a few different vocab words and an activity with vocab. Our first term is Cold War. A Cold War is different than a hot war. A hot war is where you're fighting each other and shooting stuff and blowing people up, all that stuff. A Cold War has everything that a war has except no actual fighting. So there's a lot of hostility, hatred between countries. They build up their military, they threaten each other, propaganda, they get allies, they point missiles at each other. They're doing everything as if they're about to go to war, but the war never happens. And we call that a Cold War. So the US is going to do this with the Soviet Union for decades, this potential World War III that never actually breaks out. Next, we got segregation. Segregation is a system that separates people based on their race. So different schools, different bathrooms, different drinking fountains, different sides of the bus based on the color of your skin. Next, we got economics. This is the study of wealth, resources, business, people making money, jobs, all that stuff is economics. Next, we have communism. Now, this is a type of government that wants equality. Right? Equality is the most important thing in a communist government, and they're not really going to achieve it. They're going to claim they want equality, but really they're just going to be oppressing people and taking away their rights and freedoms. So if you know anything about China or North Korea or Cuba, those are communist countries. There's a few others out there. Venezuela is sort of communist in a lot of ways. Vietnam, the Soviet Union is going to be a communist country. Next, we have capitalism. This is a system of government where freedom is the most important thing, especially economic freedom, where people have rights to do what they want, to own what they want, to buy what they want. This is an example, the U.S. is an example of a communist country. The U.S. is capitalist. America is capitalist. Mexico is capitalist. United Kingdom, most of Europe is capitalist. Japan, these are all capitalist countries. Your goal for today is to make a word map or a word diagram, might be a better way to say it. And it's going to be like what I draw on the whiteboard. One box is going to have the definition. Another box will have you explain it in your own words. Next, use it in a sentence or list out some synonyms. And last, draw a picture. All right, our goal is to try and do 4 of these today. We'll see how much time we have, but that'll be your goal. If you have any questions, let me know.